Welcome everybody, this is the A&P Bible and today we are simplifying the skeletal system within 7 to 10 minutes. So let's get into it. What are we going to learn? We're going to be able to understand and explain the functions of the skeleton. We're going to understand the structure of bone tissue and figure out what types of bone are in the body. We're going to be able to label and recognize the parts of bones, and we're going to learn about the terminologies associated with bone. Okay, let's get into it. Before we do, let's think before what comes up on the screen. So functions of bone. What do bones do? So I'm sitting up here nice and tall. Yeah, my muscles are supporting me as well, but if my bones weren't attached onto my muscles, then I would probably just be like this. So support is a massive, massive function of bones. They're going to hold us up. They're also going to support the internal organs of the body as well. Speaking of what's underneath these guys here, we have lungs, we have the heart, etc. All these internal organs are protected by bones. So protection is such a massive function of bones as well. All of our ovaries sit in underneath our pelvis and protected by bones around the hips, etc. Let's talk about another function of bone as well, which is massively important. If I turn this way, it's my brain telling my muscle to do that. But if my muscle wasn't attached to anything, then I wouldn't move. So movement. If I want to get up and sprint really quickly, it's my brain telling my muscles, but my muscles are attached to bone. So movement is a massive function of bones. Storage. What do bones store? Bone marrow and calcium. So let's get into exactly what that looks like if we were going to put it out on a PowerPoint. Here we have protection, like we spoke about with internal organs. Support, helping to sit me up. Movement, if we're going for a run and we're just moving our head from right to left. Storage of bone marrow and calcium. Oh, and I forgot attachments. So obviously because bones are attached to muscle, and that's what allows for movement. So they're your functions of bone. They're so important. Probably a little bit self-explanatory if you really think about it, but that's where they are. Ding, done and dusted. Okay. We're going to look at the skeleton now. If it is coming up to Halloween, which it is here, you can grab a fake skeleton from the dollar shop or the euro shop or whatever, and you can actually just start to feel the different bones. If you're a kinetic learner, you're going to love having your skeleton, feeling the rib cage, feeling the vertebrae of the spine. So I do recommend you do that if you do like hands-on learning. It's not going to be by any means anyway identical, but it really will help you. So this is how we break up the skeleton. See this highlighted part here, which is red? It's the skull, it's the vertebrae. Don't be alarmed by all these words. Remember, I do layered learning, so I just want you to get familiar with these words. But the vertebrae is also known as the spine. Rib cage we have here. Sternum is also just known as the breastbone, so it's the bone that just sits in front of the chest. So the axial skeleton, what does it do? It supports the head, neck, and the trunk, and that's kind of the real main skeleton is what we call the axial skeleton, because it supports that basis of the head, the neck, and the trunk. So if that's the axial skeleton, then what do we call the skeleton that supports the limbs? So the arms, the legs, the end of the pelvis, etc. It's called the appendicular skeleton. So when my eyebrows do this and my forehead makes all these little lines, that's when you know there's a multiple choice question that always comes up every year on every paper, and it's always the difference between those two things. So if I do this, just pay attention. Appendicular skeleton supports the appendages or the limbs. So upper limbs, which is just the arms, the lower limbs. The shoulder girdle, you can't see here because it's around the back, but the shoulder girdle is the clavicle, which is also known as the collarbone, and in and around to the scapula or the shoulder blade. Okay, so that's that extension there. Pelvic girdle is just those pelvis bones there and the bones within the pelvis. So axial, head, skull, vertebrae, rib cage. Appendicular, extra limbs, and shoulder and pelvic girdle. Let's have a look at the two of them together. Axial, appendicular. Okay, some of the terminology that we use when we talk about the skeletal system, we also say we could be studying osteology, which is the study of bones. So osteology is the study of bones. I've often heard that come up as well. Okay, so what are bones made of? Before we get into that, we need to know how are they made and what makes them. So there's different types of cells floating around the body. Specialized cells called osteoblasts, or what are the cells that build bone. Osteoblasts B for build, B for blast. I have it over here on the right. Osteoblasts build new bone tissue. That's what develops, especially when we're growing and extending. Then that's what's building our bones. Always when we're older as well, but it does slow down when we're older. Osteoclasts, if you can see here, I've put C for clasts, C for carve, because that's what breaks down the bone tissue. Okay, we like osteoblasts. We don't really like osteoclasts so much. Someone with as I said, just growing will have a lot of osteoblasts floating around their body. And then just over here, the closer to the surface of the bone, the more compact it is. So we'll go through that again in just 1 second. Now, up the top here, 206 bones in the body. Okay, this comes up all the time, guys. 206 bones in the body. Thank God you don't have to know every bone. Well, it depends what syllabus you're doing, but most of us don't have to know every bone. We do have to know a lot. And with those 206 bones, there's two types of bones that are in the body. There's compact bone and there's cancellous bone. Compact bone and cancellous bone. Where we find them and what their functions are, we're going to run through now. Cancellous bone, also known as spongy bone. That's really important. It looks like a sponge. It's found at the end of long bones. Don't forget, we're going to go through what long bones are in a second. And bone marrow only exists in spongy bone. Put a little NB next to that. So it looks like a sponge, found at the end of long bones, and only exists in spongy bone. Let's have a look. This is the end of a long bone. So you can see all these little holes. It kind of looks, you can see all those little dents. They look like holes, but they're actually areas and spaces that are found at the end of long bones, which are also known as the epiphysis, which is the top part or the end part of a long bone. As you go down, see it gets a little bit denser as well through the middle, so that would be the long shaft. For example, let's just take the humerus, for example, which is the long bone that comes from here and runs down to the elbow. It's a nice dense bone. It's really, really strong. And that end here is what would be sitting up here. Okay, so if you're visually trying to think about that, that's what's sitting up here. Bone marrow only exists in this area. So if you ever heard of anybody getting a bone marrow transplant, that's the area that they need to go into to get the bone marrow. That's cancellous bone. So now you can imagine if this is all cancellous, then obviously we're going to be talking about down here in a second, which is also known as compact bone. Compact bone, if we just go back to this here as well, there's loads of space around here in this cancellous bone. Down here, it's all compact and condensed. And you can see that there's not as much open space as there is at the top in the spongy bone. The compact bone. So what are some of the characteristics of compact bone? They're found on the outer layer and the shaft of long bones. They give protection and support because they're dense. They're much, much, much stronger than the head or the epiphysis of the long bone. And they're super, super strong, and they look like a honeycomb when you actually zoom in with a microscope. So they kind of look like the inside of a crunchy. If you bite that open and there's all those little holes, that's actually what it looks like. However, to the naked eye, or just when we're looking at a photo, it's really compact and condensed. And we're going to go through why in just a second. Let's look at some of the terminology here. Spongy bone up the top, which is what we just talked about a while ago. Your bone marrow coming in through here. Compact bone. Now look how condensed it is as well around the sides here as well. And obviously that's just for protection. It's so strong, has to be condensed because of impact and protection. That's why you never really hear of someone breaking like their femur, which is the big thigh bone. I actually broke both my femurs when I was 3 and 4. I just was really clumsy and had really crap bone density. But it's very uncommon. You'd more hear someone breaking their tibia or their fibula, which is the lower leg bones, because they're a little bit smaller and they're not as they're a little bit more fragile than the thigh bone. So that's probably a good example. So that's cancellous bone, or also known as spongy bone up the top, and then compact bone, which is found in how we say the shaft of the bone, which is the long part. Terminology that we need to know. So Haversian canals, which I always say wrong. Doesn't really matter if you're doing multiple choice question, but don't try and pronounce it correctly just in case you are speaking on a YouTube channel and you might want to know how to pronounce that. So these run lengthways through compact bone. and contain blood, lymph, capillaries, and nerves. I'm just going to go back again because Hervatian canals are just within here, and you can see there's already blood vessels surrounding that and in through here as well. So that's where Hervatian canals do. They also contain lymph capillaries as well, which are kind of for detoxification, and they also contain nerves. The periosteum, it's the skin that covers most bones. It's a really, really, really thin layer. This is probably a bit disgusting, but a way to visualize it if you're a visual learner is if you're eating a chicken leg or a chicken wing, probably a chicken leg, and sometimes you've eaten it all, but you can see kind of this little tiny layer of goo on the chicken. I'm so sorry for any of the vegetarians. But that's the periosteum, and it's very, very thin. It's not very noticeable. Marrow are what we call the medulla cavity. So the medulla cavity contains yellow bone marrow in adults. Okay, so that's really only in adults because we get a lot of red bone marrow when we're younger, and we'll go through the functions of that and stuff in a while. Let's have a look and see if we can label the diagram. So it's already there, but let's just go through on what we just learned and see if we can recognize what we were talking about. So the spongy bone is up the top here. It's found at the end of long bones. It's also found at the epiphysis or the head of the long bone. The diaphysis is also known as the shaft, so just the long part in between the epiphysis, the two heads of the bone. The marrow cavity, that's where the bone marrow is found. Cancellous bone is just another name for spongy bone. Periosteum is that thin layer over the bone. Compact bone is found in the shaft of the bone. Compact bone has Hervatian canals running through the blood and lymph as well. All right. Let's do some recap. List the 5 functions of bone. Let's go. Go, 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 go. So the first one. Support. Oh, I hope I put these in order. That's protection. But protection is the first one. So protection, what are we protecting our body from? Internal organs. If there's an impact, someone's punching me into my lungs, it's not going to, or into my ribcage, it's not going to pierce through into my lungs. So protection. Support, again, it's allowing to support my body in a good posture. It's also supporting me if I'm going to do any activities or just on a daily basis, just general standing, having posture, supporting my muscles and supporting the rest of my body. Movement. With that as well, storage, so storage of calcium and bone marrow, and attachments for muscles, because bone is connected to muscles and then muscles allow for movement, so bone is also allowed for movement. They're the functions of bone. Quiz time! What skeleton supports the head, the neck and the trunk? Close your eyes for a second and remember the 2 skeletons next to each other. One skeleton was red in its skull all the way through the middle trunk of the body to include the vertebrae. What was that called? What skeleton did that? That was the axial skeleton. The axial skeleton supports the head, the neck and the trunk. The appendicular skeleton supports the limbs, the shoulder girdle and the pelvic girdle. Okay? How many bones in the body? Remember I gave you this little nod? I'll leave you think about it for a minute. Say it out loud. How many bones in the body? 206 bones in the body. Excellent. List the 2 types of bones and where are they found? Give me one type of bone that's found in the epiphysis of a bone. Another word for epiphysis, head of a bone. What type of bone is found in the head of the bone? There's 2 ways you can say this. So it's spongy or cancellous bone. So spongy or cancellous bone is found in the epiphysis or the head of a bone. What we have through here, through the middle of the bone, also known as the shaft of the bone, is compact bone. What are Hervatian canals? Areas in which the bone allows the blood vessels to flow, lymph vessels to flow, and nerve vessels to flow. And this is only found in compact bone. What is another name for the head of a bone? We just spoke about that a while ago. I'm not going to say it. You should know this. Okay, I'll tell you. It's the epiphysis. So the top of the bone or the head of the bone. Okay, Easy, easy, easy. So now you can list the functions of the skeleton, recognize the difference between the axial and the appendicular skeleton, explain the two types of bones and its characteristics and also where they're found, and label and recognize the different parts of bone if there was an image of a bone put in front of you. Excellent. That's you guys. We're all done for today. That's your syllabus, part of your syllabus, squeezed into 7 to 10 minutes. Remember, you'll always have to repeat these guys over and over and over again because you're only going to retain about 45 to 50%. You've got to come back once again and listen to my annoying voice over and over and over and over again. If you have any questions, you can email me at theanpbible@gmail.com. Otherwise, you did such a good job. And remember, if you were in my classroom, we'd stop right now. We'd do 10 squats, we'd do 10 jumping jacks, we'd probably down some water, no tea, maybe a coffee if you're a coffee fanatic, and we go straight back into it again. So if you like my video, please subscribe, click the notification bell, and tell anybody that you know studying anatomy and physiology that I'm here to help you and guide you as best I can. And make sure you always go back and double check your syllabus that you have covered everything. Thanks guys, well done.